Seasons 7 and 8 of The Walking Dead are mostly considered to be the two worst seasons of The Walking Dead, and rightfully so. Personally, I like Season 7 much more than Season 8, but both are far worse than any other of the 8 seasons of the show. In this video, I would like to go over the flaws with these seasons and then map out exactly how I'd fix them. Before I begin, please remember to like, subscribe, and follow us on Twitter. The link should be in the description. Also, a warning for spoilers for The Walking Dead Seasons 7 and 8. The main problem I have with these seasons is that the plot is stretched out very thin. There was really only enough story here for about a season and a half, but they stretched it out to 2.5 seasons. There are a lot of filler episodes which slow down any momentum the show has gained, and most of them are poorly done, and you don't really care about what's happening. A great example of this is the 6th episode of Season 7, entitled Swear. The episode follows Tara as she is kidnapped by a new community called Oceanside. Firstly, this episode is very poorly paced, and it's a longer episode, so it just feels tedious and boring. Secondly, it did not need to be here. Oceanside only affected the story because the group stole some guns from them and a couple other things that they did, but they never really needed to be introduced. There were other ways to get the group guns, and they didn't really need to introduce a whole new community just for this purpose. Also, in Season 7, there is a lot of filler. We don't need to see the Saviors come into Alexandria or Hilltop unannounced as often as we do. If they only did it once or twice, then it would be interesting, but having it happen every other episode is way too much. After the third or fourth time, I just didn't care about it anymore, and it lost the tension it had the first 2 times. Season 8 also had a similar problem. It had way too much action, which is surprising, since up until this point, the show never really had a problem with having too much action. It felt like in each episode, especially in the first half, there's a huge gunfight, and only 1 or 2 characters are there who I actually care about. The action doesn't emotionally affect you because you don't care about the people who are fighting. When almost the entire kingdom's army is killed, you don't really care about it, because the characters who died, you had only met a few minutes ago. Shiva dying was somehow more emotional than 20 humans dying, since we actually met Shiva before this. She's a tiger. I shouldn't care about that more than, 20 human beings. Also, The Walking Dead should not have this much action. I've come to terms with the idea that walkers are just not going to be as much of a threat as they were in the first few seasons, and there's no one to blame for that. But just because you don't have them as a threat, that doesn't mean that the show has to be an action show with huge meaningless gunfights every 30 minutes. It felt like in Season 8 they didn't understand what the show was and what made it so good. The show was about the people, not the action, and not the zombies. That is why the show is capable of continuing when the zombies aren't as big a threat anymore, because it was never about the zombies, it was about this group of people. At least Season 7 understood that. There isn't a lot of action, and instead it relies on tense, emotional scenes, which focus on how our characters will react to these impossible situations, like when Rick almost had to chop off Carl's hand. Those scenes are very emotional and tense, and they feel like The Walking Dead, unlike the big action scenes in Season 8. Another big flaw with these seasons is the Scavengers and Oceanside. These communities barely affect the plot and could have easily been removed, and nothing would change that much. This is probably also caused by the decision to drag out the Savior War for 2.5 seasons. If this arc was shorter, they could have taken them out and spared us the boredom. They also don't do nearly enough to make these people interesting. The Scavengers are really only there to give our group something to chase after, which they never even get: more fighters. Oceanside was really only introduced to give our group guns and to teach us how evil the Saviors are. Firstly, Hilltop or the Kingdom could have done that easily with a heartfelt scene between Jesus and Ezekiel and Rick. Also, it didn't feel important enough to show, the guns could have been gone from somewhere else, so especially bringing them back in Season 8 just didn't feel important. Perhaps the most controversial death in the show's history was Carl's, which occurs in the middle of Season 8. He is killed by a walker bite which he got while trying to help a stranger named Sadiq. People were furious that they killed off a character with so much potential story left. Personally, I was never really a big fan of Carl. He was such an inconsistent character, and it felt like he just did whatever the plot needed him to do. First, he knew what had to be done and would kill people when he had to, like during the governor's assault on the prison. Then, when they were traveling to Terminus, he wanted to risk his own life to save a stranger. Then, when they got to Alexandria, he seemed to be back into the mindset that they have to kill people to save their own people. Then, at the beginning of the Savior War, he killed a bunch of Negan's men because that is what he had to do. Then, finally, he decided that killing is bad and Rick should try to make peace with Negan, which is what he eventually does. You see where I'm getting at here, there's way too much flip-flopping on killing people, and it just doesn't feel realistic, and he's just doing what the plot needs him to do. He is such an inconsistent character that he comes off as kind of a hypocrite, since he is telling his dad not to kill people, even though 3 days ago he killed a whole bunch of defenseless people. So I was not against the idea of killing Carl. I was also happy that the show was trying to show us that no one has plot armor, which ideally is what the show should be. What bothered me about Carl's death was not the idea, but how they did it. Not necessarily execution, but the idea on how it would happen. His death could have and should have affected Negan, not just Rick, and there was a very simple way to do that, which I'll discuss later. One last thing I didn't like was the controversial Season 6 finale. The entire second half of Season 6 was building up to the lineup scene, and we didn't even get to see the kill. It makes the finale pretty terrible, because that not enough happens. It also makes the deaths feel a bit cheaper once they do happen. I'm not really against cliffhangers. In fact, I love the Season 4 finale one, but there's one key difference there. Both the back half of Season 4 and the back half of Season 6 were leading up to one moment. Season 4 was leading up to the group arriving at Terminus, and Season 6 was the lineup scene. The Season 4 cliffhanger didn't feel cheap because we got what we wanted. The group was reunited and arrived at Terminus, which is exactly what they were building towards. Season 6, however, was leading up to this death, and we didn't even get that, only more building up to it. Before I get into how I would fix the Savior, I want to go over what I liked about it. First, they did a great job with Maggie in this seasons. Lauren Cohan was given a lot to work with, and she did a great job. I liked that after Glenn's death, she wasn't just crying and wallowing in self-pity. Instead, she used this experience to become a stronger and more independent person, and she rose up the ranks at Hilltop. I also loved the Season 7 premiere. The episode was super dark, which I loved. In this episode, they killed Glenn and Abraham. Abraham's death was kind of overshadowed by Glenn's, but once you notice the peace sign he gave to Sasha, which was a callback, this one is also very sad. But the big death of this episode is Glenn's. This is easily the saddest moment of pretty much any TV show for me. Between the way he dies, Maggie's reaction, and his final words, this is easily the hardest hitting moment of the entire show. I love how you can see Rick going from like a rebellious look towards Negan into more of a submissive one, which is exactly what Negan wanted. That's why this is easily the low point of the group for the entire show, in terms of the lack of power that they had. Also, the title for this episode is brilliant. The Day Will Come When You Won't Be is a callback to the Season 1 finale, when Jenner told Rick that while he is thankful today for him to be allowed another chance at a life, and also for his group, there would come a day where he wasn't, and this is that day. Every time I watch the Season 1 finale, I can't help but think about the Season 7 premiere, because of how much I love that title, and because of what it represents. There are also a bunch of other great episodes, such as Heart Still Beating, The First Day of the Rest of Your Life, How It's Gotta Be, and Honor. Also, for all the hate the Carl death gets, the execution of those scenes is great. None of them should exist in their current state because they should have been done differently, but they were executed very well, primarily because of the acting. And lastly, as per usual with The Walking Dead, the acting is top-notch. All of the actors bring their A-game, especially Lauren Cohan, Andrew Lincoln, who also had a snot bubble and didn't even get nominated for anything for that, which is kind of crazy, and Jeffrey Dean Morgan. He single-handedly made scenes watchable, which is important considering there are many episodes which fully take place with the Saviors. Negan could have easily been a very annoying villain who was hard to watch, and not in a good way, but Jeffrey Dean Morgan brought a lot of life and humanity to this character. Now that I have said everything I liked and disliked about these seasons, I'm going to go over how I would fix them. Firstly, I would pretty much leave Season 6 alone with one exception. The camera at the end of the Season 6 finale would not cut to black when Negan kills Abraham. You would see Negan's first hit on Abraham only, and then the episode ends. This way, it leaves you feeling sad that he is dead, but relieved that Glenn survived. Then the Season 7 premiere is basically the same, and then Glenn's death would hit even harder, because you think you're safe, and you haven't just spent like 6 months emotionally preparing yourselves for this. Then the biggest change I would make happens. The Savior War ends at the end of Season 7, not 8. Here's how this new season would look. We would spend the first 4 episodes with the group being like sad and depressed and being all beaten up by the Saviors, very sad stuff. So, that would be that, and that was kind of the first 8 episodes of the real Season 7. Then the next 4 are like Alexandria, Hilltop, and the Kingdom starting to come together to fight, just like the last 8 episodes of the real Season 7. The mid-season finale would basically just be the Season 7 finale, except I would take out the Scavengers since they don't exist in my Season 7. Oceanside also wouldn't exist in my Season 7 since, like the Scavengers, the role can easily be outsourced to other people. So here's what I do with Carl's death. Instead of having him being bit while he saves Siddiq, he would be shot by one of Negan's men and then Siddiq would kill that Savior. If this happened, we could still have Carl's last moments and interactions with Rick and Michonne, which as I said, I really enjoyed. Negan, however, would really be mad about this, and it would even be more upsetting to him knowing that it was his fault. This way, Rick's decision to not kill him, and Negan's decision to hear Rick out when Rick says Carl's name would make a lot more sense. The mid-season premiere would also be similar, except, like the rest of the season, it would have less action and more conversations. The next 4 episodes would be similar to the first half of Season 8, except there would be less unnecessary action. The 12th episode would be when the Saviors escape the zombie-surrounded home, and then the final 4 episodes would be our group starting to lose, just like the second half of Season 8. The finale would have one major change. Maggie would kill Negan. I hate to say this because I love Negan, but it made so much more sense for the story if Maggie killed Negan after Rick decided to spare him. It would also create a lot of drama within our main characters, which the show's done very well in the past, and I would love to see how Rick would react to Maggie just shooting Negan after he said to save him. So that's how I would fix Season 7 and 8 of The Walking Dead. Please comment what you think of my revamped Savior arc and what movies or TV shows you would like us to discuss next.